Welcome back to Remember the Book, the place where stories never truly end. Today, we open a new page and bring an epic fantasy to the table. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Let's begin. Violet Sorrengail is 20, small, chronically fragile, and absolutely not supposed to be a dragon rider. She spent her life training to be a scribe like her father, one of the scholars who record history and guard secrets in the archives beneath Basgioth War College. But the book opens on the morning of Conscription Day, and her mother, General Lilith Sorrengail, has changed Violet's entire future with one order. Violet will enter the Rider's Quadrant, or she will be dragged there by her braid. Her older sister, Mira, already a decorated rider, is horrified. She knows Violet's body is brittle, hypermobile joints, bones that fracture easily, constant injuries, and that the Rider's Quadrant is statistically a meat grinder, even for the strongest recruits. But Lilith is ruthless and unmoved. Basgioth exists to make weapons, not keep children safe, and she refuses to let one of her kids hide with the scribes. Mira can't save Violet from being a writer, but she can help her survive it. In the privacy of Violet's soon-to-be emptied room, Mira repacks her bag, throws out sentimental junk and heavy books, arms her with extra daggers, and fits her into black leathers reinforced with dragon scales over her heart. She braids Violet's distinctive brown to silver hair back into a warrior's crown and drills her with rapid-fire advice. Riders can legally kill each other anytime they're awake. Sleep in armor. Keep blades on you constantly. Be smarter and faster because you will never be stronger. Then she walks her little sister to the rider's entrance tower, hugs her hard, and says the most Mira thing possible. Don't die. I'd hate to be an only child. To even enter the Rider's Quadrant, candidates have to cross the Parapet, a 60-meter-high, half-meter-wide stone bridge spanning a roaring chasm between the main college and the Rider's Citadel. Wind howls, rain threatens, and the bridge is intentionally slick. Every year, dozens fall to their deaths. On the climb up, Violet falls in step with two other hopefuls, Rhiannon Matthias, warm and competent, and Dylan, a cheerful guy already planning his post-graduation wedding. They banter, trade nerves, and in those few minutes, Violet makes her first real allies. At the top, she and Rhiannon even swap a boot. Violet gives Rhiannon one of Mira's grippy riding boots and takes one of Rhiannon's slick ones. So at least they each have one secure foot on the stone. Then it's Violet's turn. The crossing is pure terror. She keeps her eyes on the stones, spreads her arms for balance, feels the wind trying to yank her off with each step. Another candidate jostles her, trying to knock the general's weak daughter to her death, but she twists free and keeps going. When someone behind her plunges screaming into the ravine, she almost freezes, but Mira's voice in her head won't let her. Somehow, she makes it across. She's a rider cadet now, no going back. Basgioth War College trains 4 kinds of officers for Navarre: healers, scribes, infantry, and riders, who bond with dragons and form the elite aerial corps defending Navarre's borders. Violet is painfully aware she doesn't belong in the Rider's Quadrant. The culture is brutal by design. The weak are culled so dragons never have to waste their time incinerating unworthy humans. Every day there are challenges, formal or accidental, and a tally board tracks the dead. Violet is assigned to 2nd Squad, 4th Wing, under wing leader Xaden Rearson. Name very much not random. His father was the great traitor who led a rebellion 5 years earlier and was personally executed by General Lilith Sorrengail. Every marked child of a rebel carries a magical relic carved into their skin by a dragon as punishment and reminder. Xaden is covered in them, neck to hands. Xaden should be Violet's worst enemy. He certainly treats her like a dead woman walking at first, warning her that if she survives long enough to threaten his people, he'll kill her himself. But his dragon, the powerful black feather-tail scale, has mated with an as-yet unknown male, and that magical bond will matter later. Violet's childhood best friend Dane Atos is also there, now a rule-bound squad leader.
Dane is horrified to find Violet on the Rider side of the parapet. He loves her, but in a paternalistic, suffocating way. He keeps insisting she's too fragile, begging her to transfer out, constantly adjusting her armor and telling her what she can't do. He thinks he's protecting her. Mostly, he's underestimating her. Between Dane's coddling, Xaden's cold hostility, and a whole quadrant that sees her as the general's pampered little liability, Violet has exactly one advantage: her brain. Years of scribe training means she remembers every rule, every battle tactic, every obscure bit of codex law. And in Basquiat, knowledge is a weapon.
The first months are survival by inches. Violet's joints dislocate, her muscles tear, her hands blister. She learns hand-to-hand combat from a sadistic instructor who happily lets other cadets beat her bloody. Jack Barlow, a hulking bully, fixates on her as easy prey and repeatedly, accidentally, tries to kill her during sparring. Dane keeps asking her to quit. Xaden deliberately stays out of her way, letting the world test if she's worth keeping alive. Violet refuses to quit. She adapts. She fights dirty, using leverage, speed, and knives instead of brute strength. She memorizes other cadets' weaknesses from the Cynoprosters. She studies the Codex and realizes there are limits to when and how riders can kill each other. She even survives a challenge on the mat by weaponizing Jack's orange allergy. She pelts him with oranges until his reaction closes his throat and drops him in front of the entire wing. Mid-year comes the Gauntlet, an insane vertical obstacle course up the side of the Rider's Tower, spinning logs, swinging hammers, crumbling handholds, culminating in a sprint to leap onto a landing platform. Failure means death. This is the second great culling of first years. Violet fails, repeatedly. Her body simply can't brute force the course the way others can, but she studies the pattern of the obstacles and realizes they're not random. Using that knowledge, she plots an unconventional route, using momentum and timing instead of strength. On what is basically her last allowed attempt, she runs it differently, darting diagonals, dropping where others climb, and reaches the top. She collapses on the landing, bleeding and shaking, and hears the roars of approval from the upper years who've been secretly betting she'd die. Xaden is there, watching. For the first time, he looks at her not as a liability, but as someone interesting. The reward for surviving the gauntlet, you're allowed to participate in threshing. Threshing is where dragons choose their riders, or kill them. Cadets are dropped into the valley where the dragons of Navarre gather on the waiting grounds. You approach one and hope it doesn't roast you. If you're lucky, one will decide you're worthy and bond. It's a day of chaos and terror. Dragons are huge, terrifyingly intelligent, and absolutely not sentimental about humans. They have strict rules about who can approach them, and they hate crowds around their hatchlings. Violet is doubly doomed because her mother has alienated half the dragon population with her ruthless commands, and most dragons despise weakness. But she has her father's stories and a scholar's eye. She knows some dragons are smaller, faster, more suited to a rider like her. In the chaos, she notices something that changes everything. A tiny, unmated golden dragonling being threatened by a group of desperate cadets who think killing her will impress larger dragons. Violet, scrawny and armed with knives, steps between them and the baby dragon. She's entirely outmatched. She stands there anyway. Her defiance buys time for the massive black dragon who's clearly Indarna's protector, a huge, battle-scarred male feathertail. He incinerates the attackers and turns that burning gaze on Violet. Everyone assumes this is Tyern, one of the oldest, most powerful dragons alive, the last dragon you'd expect to take a small, fragile rider. But in a shocking twist, he chooses her, and the little golden Andarna, against all rules, also forms a secondary bond with Violet. No rider has bonded two dragons in living memory. It's essentially unheard of. The political consequences are immediate. Because Indarna is young, she needs to sleep deep, magically frozen, for long stretches, limiting the power she shares. Because Tyern has made it to scale, Xaden and Violet are now magically tethered. They can speak mind to mind, sense each other's emotions, and feel each other's pain. For two people whose families tried to kill each other, that's awkward.
But there's no undoing dragon bonds. Tyern has chosen. Violet is now one of the most valuable and vulnerable assets at Badge the App. Once you've bonded, the next big step is manifesting your signet, the individual magical power your dragon channels through you. It's unpredictable and usually emerges under extreme stress. Some get shields, some get teleportation, some get mind reading. Violet's signet takes its sweet time. Meanwhile, she begins flight training with Tyern, learning how to ride a dragon who thinks nothing of dropping her off a mountain to teach her to stay strapped in. She grows closer to her squad mates, especially Rhiannon, Liam, a sweet loyal rider from Zayden's home province, and the irreverent Riddock. Zayden starts secretly training her at night, pushing her past what her body thinks it can do, but always with an eye on her survival, not Batch the Act's comfort. Their forced proximity through the dragon bond slowly turns into wary respect, and then something hotter. Dane, watching all this, becomes more and more rigid. He files complaints, tries to have Violet reassigned, constantly insists she obey every rule to the letter. Where Zayden says, "You are capable of more than they think," Dane says, "You shouldn't even be here." This emotional triangle isn't just romance drama, it's about control. Dane wants her safe within the system. Zayden wants her alive outside of it. Violet wants to choose for herself.
Between flying lessons and survival training, every rider attends Battle Brief, where they're taught the official version of current military engagements. Violet, steeped in her father's maps and notes, starts spotting discrepancies, missing engagements, rearranged timelines, battles that don't match the physical geography. One day, she and Liam accidentally read a battlefield report that isn't marked classified, but clearly should be. It describes an attack near the usually quiet Breivik Mountains that doesn't appear on any of their maps. When they show up to battle brief, that engagement is simply not mentioned. The more Violet looks, the more she suspects the scribe order, her father's old world, is actively rewriting history. Something is being fought in those mountains that they're not allowed to know about. Meanwhile, epigraphs at the start of chapters quote from The Book of Brennan, a journal by Violet's supposedly dead older brother. He questions blind obedience, warns about power becoming addictive, and openly wonders what else Navarre's leadership is hiding. Those snippets start as flavor text. Slowly, they become another thread hinting that the official story of the war is a lie. Violet's magic finally manifests during yet another attempt on her life. Jack Barlow challenges her again, this time using poisoned blades. In the chaos of the fight, Tyorn's power floods her, and her signet erupts. She can call and channel lightning. It scorches through Jack, through the arena, through anyone touching her, until her friends Redoc and Emeterio grab her and ground the storm, nearly dying in the process. Jack drops, clawing at his throat, and dies from a combination of lightning trauma and his own orange allergy. The signet is both incredible and terrifying. Lightning is devastating but hard to control. Violet could kill her friends as easily as her enemies. Tyorn warns her that power is intoxicating, that riders can become addicts to their own magic and lose themselves. Around the same time, Dane reveals his signet. With a touch, he can see someone's recent memories. He uses it on Violet more than once under the guise of checking on her, basically rifling through her mind without explicit consent whenever he's worried or suspicious. At first, she brushes it off as concerned. Then she realizes it's a violation. That violation becomes catastrophic when he touches her face after she's seen proof that Zayden and the other marked riders are secretly flying sorties to protect remote villages that Navarre's leadership has unofficially abandoned. Dane pulls that memory from her mind and runs straight to command. Violet's sense of safety with Dane shatters. Whatever affection she had for him dies on the spot. The riders are sent on war games to the outpost of Samara, a live fire exercise where first-years support older wings. There, Violet sees something that detonates everything she's been taught. Griffin riders, people she's been told are enemies, are fighting alongside Navarre's rebels and defending civilians from horrifying, almost mythical enemies called Venin and their created creatures, Wyvern. These aren't
ordinary opposing soldiers. Venin are humans who have given up bonds with dragons or griffins to draw raw magic directly from the land, corrupting themselves and everything around them. Wyvern are dragon-like monsters made to channel that stolen power. Navarre's command has been telling everyone for centuries that Venin are extinct and Wyvern are fairy tales. Stories from Violet's childhood books, the ones that painted unbonded magic as monstrous. Turns out, those fables were history. The protective wards that keep Venin out of Navarre are failing, and instead of warning their people or rebuilding, the leadership is quietly sending marked riders like Xaden on suicide missions to hold the line and die in the dark. On a stormy night after the battle, Xaden finally lays it all out for Violet. Her parents died in a rebellion that wasn't about overthrowing Navarre for fun, it was about stopping leadership from abandoning outlying provinces to Venin. The marked kids weren't recruited as an act of mercy, they were press-ganged as hostages and disposable soldiers. Brennan, Violet's brother, supported the rebellion, and his death has always been suspicious. Violet's world cracks. Her loyalty to her mother and to Navarre collides with her loyalty to truth and the innocents being eaten alive on the borders. She chooses truth. She doesn't join Xaden's secret cabal officially, not yet, but she refuses to betray him. She stops reporting his movements, stops giving Dane any access to her mind, and starts thinking like someone whose real enemy might be sitting on Navarre's throne. By now, the slow burn between Violet and Xaden has gone from sparks to wildfire. Their dragons are literally mated and keep shoving images of each other's riders into their minds. Tyorn and Skygail want them together. Every time Violet tries to stay mad at Xaden, she feels his dragon's possessive affection through the bond. But it's more than magical matchmaking. Xaden trusts her with the rebellion's secrets. He trains her to use her lightning without frying her brain. He respects her choices, even when he hates them. When they finally give in and sleep together, it's after she's chosen, eyes open, to stand on his side of the line, knowing exactly how messy that makes her relationship with her mother and her homeland. They swear no oaths, but the emotional commitment is clear. Whatever comes, we face it together. The real climax begins when their wing is ordered to participate in another war game, this time at the trading outpost of Samara. On paper, it's a simple exercise. In reality, it's a death sentence. Xaden receives a missive. Either he abandons Resin and flies on to his new official command posting, or he disobeys orders, saves the civilians, and becomes a traitor again. Command knows he can't leave innocent people to die. They've set up a no-win scenario to remove him and the other marked riders in one convenient Venin attack. From the ramparts overlooking the valley, Violet and the others see explosions and blue-tinged smoke rising from Resin. Venin are already there. There are 4 of them and a horde of wyvern. Their little force, 10 riders, is badly outnumbered. They argue. Bodhi, one of Xaden's closest friends, wants to charge in. Xaden weighs their odds and the political consequences. Violet quietly points out that wyvern and Venin match the fables from her beloved supposedly fictional childhood book, tying her scholar's past to the deadly present. In the end, they all choose the same thing. They're writers. Their job is to protect civilians. Orders damned. The battle is brutal. Violet and Tyorn rip the sky apart with lightning, frying wyvern mid-air. Xaden and Skygail unleash shadow-stepping tricks and blades made of night. Liam fights like a demon to keep Violet's flank clear. Their friends are wounded one by one. The Venin are terrifyingly hard to kill. Their bodies burn with the magic they've stolen, and they can shrug wounds that would fail any human. In the chaos, a Venin nearly kills Violet. Liam throws himself between them, takes the strike meant for her, and dies. His dragon keens in grief, and through the web of dragon bonds, that grief slams into Tyorn and through him into Violet. It's a psychic earthquake. She almost loses control of her lightning entirely. They win, technically. The Venin retreat, many wyvern are dead, and Resin still stands. But the cost is enormous, and command never meant for them to survive. Violet herself is gravely injured, ripped open, bleeding out. Tyorn is hurt, Ardana, in a moment of desperate, never-before-seen magic, slows time around Violet, stretching out the seconds so Tyorn and the others can get her to safety before her heart stops. That temporal manipulation hints that the little golden dragon is something far stranger than anyone thought.
When Violet wakes, she's not in Basgiath's Healer's Quadrant infirmary. She's in a hidden fortress with unfamiliar stonework, surrounded by people who are technically traitors, Xaden's true comrades, Griffin riders, and rebels from the supposedly crushed uprising. This is Aritia, the rebellion's stronghold, long thought destroyed. She's furious at first. As far as she knew, she swore oath to Navarre. Being spirited away to a rebel base looks like kidnapping. Xaden argues they had no choice. If he'd flown her back to Basgiath, command would have executed them all for disobeying orders at Resin and likely let her die of her injuries, rather than admit Venin were involved. Violet is still processing Liam's death. Resin, Venin, the realization that her mother and the leadership deliberately sent them to die when the door opens and someone she's mourned for 5 years walks in. Brennan Sorrengail, her brother, very much alive. Navarre faked his death after the rebellion, and he's been one of the key leaders of the resistance ever since, writing the skeptical, subversive Book of Brennan, whose quotes have threaded through the story from page 1. The entire book snaps into new focus. Lilith isn't just an emotionally distant mother. She's the general of a regime that lies to its citizens and sacrifices its own writers rather than admit the truth about Venin. The scribes, Violet's old dream, are the machinery of that lie, altering reports, erasing battles, turning history into propaganda. Xaden hasn't been slowly corrupting Violet. He's been preparing her to see what Brennan already knew. The last line is Brennan looking at his battered, lightning-wielding little sister, bonded to the second most powerful dragon in existence, tied to the rebel wing leader by mated dragons in love, and welcoming her into the cause. Welcome to the revolution, Violet. Even though the story is told almost entirely in Violet's first-person present tense, the real multiple perspectives come from the epigraphs at the start of each chapter. Snippets from Brennan's book, codices, battle reports, and other documents. Early on, they read like flavor text or world-building trivia. As the plot unfolds, they take on heavier meaning. Brennan's early insistence that Violet will never be able to take a life makes her later killing of Jack and her refusal to give up on surviving hit harder. His warnings about the addictive nature of power mirror Violet's own struggle with her lightning and the Venin's corruption. The scribes, Violet's old dream, are the machinery of that lie, altering reports, erasing battles, turning history into propaganda. By the time Brennan actually walks on stage in the finale, it feels like a ghost stepping out of the margins into the main narrative. The reveal doesn't just resurrect a brother. It flips the reader's understanding of the whole book's historical scaffolding. World building. Navarre is a mountain kingdom, held together by dragon riders and magical wards. Its neighbors include Poramil, griffin riders, and the true existential threat, long dismissed as a myth, is the Venin, people who drain magic directly from the earth, corrupting land and creatures to build armies of wyvern. The wards that once held them back are failing, and instead of mobilizing, Navarre's leadership is hiding the truth to maintain control and avoid panic. Violet. She starts as the weakest person in the deadliest quadrant, pushed there by a mother who doesn't understand her and a society that equates physical strength with worth. Over the course of the book, she becomes a rider who survives not despite her fragility, but because she learns to fight in a way that suits her, using strategy, knowledge, and ruthless creativity. Her moral arc is about shifting loyalty from a corrupt state to the people who actually stand between civilians and annihilation. Xaden, he's on the surface the brooding, dangerous wing leader who might kill her. Underneath, he's a deeply traumatized survivor of state violence,
carrying the burden of every marked kid whose parents were executed. His rebellion isn't abstract ideology. It's a desperate attempt to plug the holes in a dam that Navarre's leaders pretend isn't cracking. Violet falling for him means falling for the uncomfortable truth he represents. Dane. He's not evil, but he's the face of well-meaning authoritarianism. His signet lets him read memories, and he uses that power under the belief that if you're doing nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. His betrayal isn't made out of malice, but out of unshakable faith in the chain of command. That makes him, in some ways, more dangerous than open enemies like Jack. Lilith. She barely appears on page after the opening, but her presence is everywhere. She's the embodiment of the regime, efficient, terrifying, willing to send her own child across a death bridge to keep her out of the lesser scribe quadrant. Her love is real in a hard, warped way, but her loyalty is to Navarre above any individual life. The fact that Brennan is alive and working against her sets up an inevitable future collision. By the end, Violet is no longer just the general's fragile daughter who got shoved onto a parapet. She's a double-bonded rider with a lightning signet intimately tied to both the rebellion's leader, Brennan, and its sharpest weapon, Xaden. She knows the Venin are real, the Wyvern are coming, the wards are failing, and her own kingdom is prepared to sacrifice entire villages and wings of cadets to keep that secret. And now she's stuck exactly where she never wanted to be, at the center of a coming war, holding enough power to change everything, if it doesn't consume her first.
We close this chapter for now, but the story remains. If you want to keep bringing forgotten books back into the light, subscribe and stay with me for the next one. And if there's a book you want us to revisit or summarize, drop it in the comments. Until next time, see you soon.